Good morning, I'm Robert Tan. Join us as we follow the money from the financial choices that shape your daily life to the bigger forces driving the economy. The headlines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. warns the country is at risk of heading into stagflation. No more repeat of the flood control scandal. That's the promise of the new budget chief. And we talk about the hidden pressures not often discussed in the context of the global oil crisis, fertilizer, petrochemicals, steel, and more. Bryan Ang of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry joins us. High prices, slow growth, unemployment, when combined, they create the perfect storm, stagflation, which the president sees as an increasing possibility. Chesulit has the story.
As to the economy, the concern that we have is the concern about stagflation, which is when the GDP growth is stagnant, but inflation continues to increase.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has once again raised the alarm over the country's stagflation risks. At a roundtable with Japanese media, Marcos warned that the impacts of the Middle East conflict have spilled over to the rising prices of goods and services at home. The crisis has led to a spike in fuel prices over the past months, affecting several sectors including transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and MSMEs. The latest data from the Philippine Statistics Authority has shown that the country's inflation rate surged to 7.2% in April, and economic growth slowed to 2.8% for the first quarter of the year. With these figures, economist Jonathan Ravella says that the country is potentially at risk of stagflation, but stresses that we are not there yet. Stagflation is characterized by high inflation, high unemployment, and slow economic growth.
At the start of the year, we were ready to spend. Things were getting brighter, then suddenly things changed. Now, it's very difficult to convince households to spend when prices are going up, where every month prices of goods, gasoline, and electricity continues to go up.
De La Salle University economists have also warned that the Philippine economy is decelerating. In the DLSU report on the Philippine economy for May 2026, academics now project a growth rate of 3.11% for this year. That's lower than last year's 4.4%. The experts also warned that the rising cost of fertilizer could drive up agricultural production costs, which may eventually lead to higher prices for consumers. Meanwhile, the peso is also expected to depreciate further in 2026. The economists say the country's currency may hit a record low of 63.5 pesos against the US dollar in August. For Avelas, the country's economic growth may still improve. He projects that government spending may pick up in the second part of this year, addressing the deceleration. As of now, he says consumers have shifted to a cautious recovery mode as Filipinos opt to be selective with buying in order to save up their money. Chesulit, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
On day one, the new budget secretary pledged there will be no repeat of the flood control scandal. At his turnover ceremony, Kim De Leon vowed to intensify the crackdown on budget misuse.
We are also mindful of past concerns that continue to haunt the budget process. But let us be clear. We must not allow this to prevent us from doing what is legally mandated for us to do. In the same vein, we will not allow the budget to be abused again for another flood control scandal. Klaro ang direktiba ng presidente. Bawat piso mapupunta sa tao.
Up next, the global oil crisis isn't just about fuel. There's fertilizer, steel, packaging, and many more. We look at the sectors feeling the pressure with Bryan Ang of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Keep following the money. Welcome back to Follow the Money. Fuel, transport, fertilizer, packaging. One by one, the costs behind everyday goods and services keep climbing. Together, they can set off ripple effects that eventually show up on your bill. How much more can companies absorb before those costs are passed on to consumers? And joining us this morning is Bryan Ang, Vice President for Trade of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning, Bryan, and welcome to Follow the Money.
Good morning, Robert, and thank you for having me again.
Bryan, let's start with the big picture. What's actually disrupting Philippine supply chains right now? From your conversations with PCCI members, where are the real pressure points today?
Well, Robert, let me share first that yesterday I was in a big event called the National Conference of Employers, hosted by the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. And I was sitting beside diplomats and heads of mission of the ASEAN countries. And guess what? A common question that they would ask me is, Bryan, why are we looking at the wrong numbers? Every day in the news, the numbers they are presenting are who is the majority and who is the minority in the Senate. Why are we not talking about inflation at 7.1%? Why are we not talking about GDP slow down to 2.8%? And why are we not talking about the FX, foreign exchange, teetering at 62 pesos to the US dollar? These are key economic indicators that are very alarming for the business community and for the international community as well.
So do you think the political noise right now is drowning out a lot of what's really causing a lot of the pain points on individuals and businesses here in the Philippines?
You're perfectly right, Robert. I mean, look at the news. Every day it is all about impeachment. It is all about change in the leadership of the Senate. In the international news, videos of a senator running through the stairs trying to evade authorities, videos of shooting in the Senate. These made the headlines of Bloomberg even. So this is very bad optics for our country. We are much more than the politics that is in the news today.
And so outside of politics, Bryan, we see, like you've mentioned, fertilizer doesn't really get as much airtime as fuel or power, but you flagged it. What's happening there, and how far beyond the farm does that pressure ripple?
Okay, so earlier during the start of the war, we already flagged that not only fuel is affected by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, nitrogen-based fertilizer, especially urea and ammonia, have skyrocketed in price. Urea specifically from $400 to $700 per metric ton. And these are critical inputs used in the agriculture sector. This will yield to lower outputs for our agricultural sector and immediately increase their costs. The problem, Robert, is summer is coming to an end, and what follows is rainy season and the typhoon season. And usually during this time, the agricultural sector is most hit as well. So we should expect food prices to go up as a second wave to this Middle East crisis. The first wave was the increase in pump prices, the increase in transport costs. The second wave, we will expect increase in food costs. Sadly.
And to add to that, steel and paint prices have moved. We've seen the effects. Some real estate developers have stopped luxury developments. Now, what does that mean for the businesses like the real estate and construction business?
Yes, we have heard.
Yes.
Robert, we have heard big real estate developers not only cancel luxury developments, but also all these mid-level developments that are supposed to be fast-moving sector. A large portion of this can be attributed to the surge in construction prices, specifically steel, I heard, has been up by 40% and paint by more than double because paint raw materials are also affected by the increase in petrochemical hike in prices.
Yes.
And the problem is, if you have contracts that were signed pre-war, these would have the old prices in effect. So if you negotiate for price variation adjustment with your developer or even the government, very rarely will they agree to adjust their pricing for you because they themselves have also priced in the original cost of the contract. And what this leads to is possible suspension of the project, and then during worst cases is outright cancellation. And when you cancel projects, jobs will definitely be lost. because construction is a cascading,
Yes.
has a cascading effect on job generation, especially.
Yes, and it also affects our GDP, especially if infrastructure are not moving. But let's also talk about what you've mentioned, petrochemicals. That's also feeding into packaging, and I just learned about it also that it's also being used in the ink that we use when we print. Now, which it also touches everything. How are businesses handling that as well?
Well, right now, we haven't really felt that yet because naphtha and ethylene are also two of the most critical raw materials when it comes to petrochemicals. They are what is needed to produce the resins that make all these packaging materials. So you will see inevitably an increase in consumer good prices, not just because of direct cost in fuel, but also because of freight, because of packaging. And as I mentioned, paint uses a lot of solvents, adhesives, that have also increased in prices.
Yes.
So prices in paint domestically, if you check, have skyrocketed as well.
So on the ground, when you put it all together, Brian, besides the fuel prices, fertilizer, petrochemicals, paint, and steel all going up, what are the businesses, what are the conversations right now with PCCI and the member businesses that you have in terms of what can be done on the short term and the midterm while waiting for everything to ease out?
If you are a manufacturer right now, these are all the pain points. Parang so many knives stabbing you at the back right now that you cannot control. Operating costs are all up, but demand is down. You are constantly pressured by government on price cap to keep prices down. I heard that manufacturers of critical consumer goods like instant noodles and sardines are already asking the DTI for permission to increase their prices because they've been asked to withhold prices since the start of the war. But then there was no subsidy given to them for both fuel and their operating costs. Even their electricity cost is going up right now. So very difficult times. We are doing everything we can to tighten our belts to control spending. But then there has to be a leeway, a give and take between government and the private sector, whether to increase prices, maybe in small increments. Otherwise, you will see that we will have to, for example, if you're buying sardines, you may not see the same quantity when you open the can anymore if we're forced to keep prices at the same levels.
If before 4 pieces, baka 3 pieces na lang.
Exactly, or 3.5, because I want to keep prices at my 24, 25 peso level. Pag masyadong mataas naman, if they increase by, let's say, 5 pesos, mawawalan siya ng negosyo. Buyers will move to other choices.
It is hard to imagine, of course, everybody's tightening their belts, but with everything going up. And it seems, Brian, that all sectors seems to be affected. And to add to that, electricity costs you've mentioned are going up. We've seen rotating brownouts. Rainy season is coming up. We saw over the weekend flooding in some areas. How is the business sector managing all of these at the same time?
Well, we are looking to government to assist us when it comes to these rotating brownouts. They are saying that the national grid still has to upgrade their infrastructure, and they are delayed in the implementation of certain projects. But then the national grid is saying, you have to give me enough supply. A lot of the generating plants are closed or beyond optimal output. And so the PCCI actually has come up with a very strong statement that maybe we should be more flexible when it comes to our policy on coal. Because as you know, coal is critical in ensuring the baseload of any economy, especially an emerging economy like ours. Coal is the fastest way that we can ensure we have baseload, especially during peak hours. We are very close to Indonesia. Indonesia is the world's largest producer of coal. They can easily help us with securing our supply of coal at very competitive prices. This does not mean that we stop the renewable energy program, but we can we can develop both. While we develop renewables, we also continue to pursue coal. In fact, developed countries like South Korea and India have already announced today that they are changing their policy on coal again because of increase in demand in electricity. They have openly stated that they will slow down the delay they will delay the closure of their coal plants, and in fact, they may continue to reinstate their coal supply agenda. So if developed countries are doing this, maybe we can copy them.
Are you seeing any serious discussions between the business sector and the government with regards to all these recommendations, coal, even putting up our own oil refinery here, revisiting the deregulation law, looking at all these other things that need to be done, not only in the short term and the midterm, because if you look at also renewables, it will take a long time before it actually all takes effect. Are you seeing a lot of serious discussions right now, or is it just right now just being recommended and it's a wait and see?
I believe that our energy secretary and our economic managers are very serious when it comes to energy and electricity security. In fact, they are announcing this Pax Silica initiative in the Luzon corridor, where big multinational companies such as Foxconn have declared interest to invest in the AI innovation hub, I think in New Clark City. So to be able to engage such large companies, you have to give them uninterruptible power supply, especially during peak hours, Robert. A hyperscale AI data center will need uninterrupted power of at least 100 megawatts.
And that's a lot of power.
This has to be immediately addressed by our economic managers and by government.
Now, looking at all that, do you think those kinds of initiatives will work in terms of helping us be more competitive compared to our ASEAN neighbors?
Definitely. This has opened, first, hosting the ASEAN has opened the eyes of our ASEAN neighbors that the Philippines is ready for business. And amidst all of this political noise, there are still many opportunities and pockets of growth that that they can explore. And one of this, as mentioned, is this US and ASEAN initiative, which we should continue to push for. I mean, if Foxconn really decides to open, this will have a big net effect on our economy and generate a lot of jobs.
Now, Bryan, the commercial transport sector is struggling. What happens to the broader economy if logistics and the supply chain starts to crack?
Well, Robert, let me take this opportunity to also voice out the concerns of our commercial transport sector. They have come to us on several times crying on random destination charges being levied to them by shipping lines because they are deregulated. So these charges can amount to almost 100,000 pesos on top of what you are paying on shipping, freight, and insurance. So imagine all this cost is being passed on to the importer. And the importer, of course, will just pass this on to the consumers later on. Again, inflationary. On top of these random destination charges, they're saying that returning empty containers is also an issue because there is not enough space in our container yards. And because of that, more charges on demoraje, more charges on detention charges, all of which are again being passed to the importer and the stakeholders. So this can have and will have an inflationary effect on all the goods, whether raw materials or finished products, which are being imported. And you must remember, government gave a lot of subsidy and assistance to the marginalized transport, but as of today, zero subsidy to the commercial transport sector.
Well, it seems that everybody's really seeing the problem right now. Even the president has said there could be a problem of stagflation, but we're not there yet. So even if there's a lot of work right now that we need to do, we're not there yet, and there's still hope.
Well, if you look at the recent academic reports from De La Salle, they said inflation from 7.1 will go up to 8% in the third quarter. GDP will slow down from 2.8 to 2.3 in the third quarter. So these show signs of leading towards stagflation, and we must not rest on our laurels. We must continue to prepare and over-prepare. We should continue. These are alarm bells and red flags that government should immediately address. Because once you reach stagflation, it's like a quicksand, where the more you dig, the deeper you go.
So as you've mentioned, Bryan, there's still a lot to do. Right now, you've mentioned there's a lot of noise in politics and in the institutions. Now, from a pure business standpoint, what does that kind of environment do to confidence, to investment decisions, to the willingness of people to actually put money to work?
Well, first of all, we must respect that we are a democracy, and impeachment is a democratic process. Election of Senate leaders, especially the Senate presidency, is a democratic process. But however, the optics this makes for the international and local businessman, It sends a message of unpredictability and instability. And as you know, businesses, especially investors, they will always invest in the economies that are most predictable and most stable. The crisis already has given us a black eye. The Middle East crisis has given us a black eye on how unprepared we were as a nation on this energy emergency. Second, we also had a flood control crisis.
Yeah.
So it shows corruption in government. So this is a third.
So a lot to do on that point,
Political
Bryan,
instability naman. So if you are a foreign investor, would you look at the Philippines first, or would I just rather go to Vietnam? Diba?
That's the problem. So hopefully things work. But before we let you go, Bryan, we're bringing back our rapid fire questions. It's only answerable by yes or no. Just a few questions. Let's start with this. Is the Philippine business environment harder today than it was 2 years ago? Yes or no?
Unfortunately, yes.
Are foreign investors paying attention to the political noise? Yes or no?
Unfortunately, yes.
And if nothing changes in the next 6 months, does it get worse before it gets better? Yes or no?
Unfortunately, yes.
And finally, Bryan, how do you follow the money?
To follow the money, we have to take a good look into the mirror and evaluate ourselves, both as a business and as a country. That is the only way that money can come back into the Philippines.
Hopefully that does happen. Bryan, on that note, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your time and sharing your insights on the show.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, and that's all for today. I'm Robert Tan. Every day will help you make sense of the financial choices and economic forces that shape everyday life. Thank you for watching. Keep it here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel, and always follow the money.